In September of 2011, Scarlett Price will be released after serving a 10-year sentence for a murder she would commit in 2013. My name is Scarlett Price. I grew up 100 miles from Forks, 99 miles from Hawkins, and 98 miles from downtown Beacon Hills. Also, the wonderland that Alice lives in was just a fairy tale to me. To make a long story short, I grew up somewhere far from anything good or interesting, in an urban town where everyone knew each other, and 99% of marriages were arranged through acquaintances. The founders of this town were simple American farmers who grew nothing but wheat in their fields and would-be bacon in their paddocks for the perfect breakfast of all the good American citizens who cherish family values. Except I wasn't part of the town's plans. Lars Anderson and I were married at my mother's request, who at my 16th birthday was already in the 3rd stage of her cancer. She was nearly dead when Lars and I got married, and completely dead when I killed him. I hope you found yourself a good place in hell, Georgina Bachelor. Oh, how many times did I tell you that he wasn't my type, Mother? And you, stick to this story until the very end, because near the middle of it, I'll number my husband's days just to make myself happy. Mark my words. Toddy Lumpkin, you charlatan. I gave you $100 to predict my life, and there wasn't even a freaking happy ending. You only had one job. Well, here we go. Early October, a time for the leaves on the trees to fall and for all the kids to get ready for Halloween. I looked out through the bars and onto the street where the guards were going about their patrol routes. I could only see their feet and the ground where the leaves that had fallen from the trees had piled, unfortunately. The treetops were a long way up. I always thought all the people on the upper floors were incredibly lucky to be able to see the astonishing fall scenery, and those in the heavens were even luckier. I apologize, but my pessimism and suicidal tendencies can be easily justified by the 10-year prison sentence without parole. This will soon pass, bear with me. It was only at that moment when I looked out the window that I realized how long it had been since I had seen the sky. I hadn't uttered the word freedom in the last 10 years, and I hadn't felt love either. No one visited me, and I spent my phone call privileges intimidating the guards, calling their wives and children, calling them by their names. You should have seen their faces. The guards couldn't stop me from calling too. It was my little privilege. I guess I managed to piss everyone off here. Staring out the window and remembering all the events that occurred over the past 10 years, I completely lost track of time. The grating of the cell bars brought me out of my mind. They had come for me. It was time to go. As I stepped outside, I caught a glimpse of at least 3 others I knew who had been released along with me. Jessica, Rachel, Monica. Piper? No, releasing her was a mistake, Your Honor. I looked ahead and saw one straight road with no turns. Desert and cacti surrounded me on all sides. After the wind picked up, my whole mouth was filled with sand, probably from some cowboy's boots. I figured I was going to have to walk 5 miles when an old pickup truck pulled up next to me. I hadn't changed in 10 years, and it looked better than its driver. Charlotte Crosby, my best friend since high school, got out of the truck. What a coincidence, I was going that way too. Her sense of humor was still atrocious. Okay, get in, we'll talk along the way. I jumped into the cargo hold, clearly showing that I had nothing to say. If I don't tell you this now, I'll forget later. There was no stopping her. She told me about some rumors going around about the case. Lars allegedly wasn't dead, but alive and kicking. I didn't hear the rest of what Charlotte had to say as the wind was louder than her, but I'd been thinking about this those entire 10 years. Nervous, angry, wanting to enact revenge, but on who? I had no clear goal, only my emotions. I wanted to let go of everything and forget about what had happened 10 years ago. But you know what they say, if something hides inside of us, it doesn't leave. It just waits for the right moment to reappear. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I came home later than usual, having stayed at work late. I was holding on to a bag of rice, curry sauce, and a couple of other ingredients that were missing at home. I wanted to make curry for a family dinner. I had been thinking about this all week. You know how it is when you want something all the time? That's how it is with pregnant women. Shame that at 3 months, I forgot what it was like. Too soon. I had a miscarriage because I was under a lot of stress. When I walked into the house, I saw a river of blood. I couldn't make out exactly what the blood was from. If there had been a human being lying there, there was nothing left of the body. A massacre. Scarlett correctly described it. A massacre. A massacre. We're here. The car braked sharply, and I hit my forehead against the front seat. It hurt, but no more than the stun gun in prison. That pain, the aftertaste of metal in my mouth, I will never forget. It'll be one of the reasons why, at the end, I'll be smiling even wider than that Guinness World Records dude. With that thought in mind, I got out of the car and stood in front of a 4-story building. The second floor, apartment 4B, was all my mother had left me, not counting my memories of her. I had saved up for everything else on my own through hard work and skill, or should I say social skills, which Georgina didn't have. I held a set of keys in my hand and tried to remember which key would open the door. The most worn down one, that's for sure. Alcoholics can't even open a lock, and my mom's hands were shaking all the time. Scarlett shoved some bags of food into my hands and a wad of cash to start with. I was grateful, but I didn't like it when people did me favors, so I always did them myself. Oh, and there's a lot more of my old friend Carmen Jones who could tell you about that. Regardless of my principles, I did need help. If I had refused, I'd be the sorriest person on earth. And that's my second principle, to never be that sorriest person on earth. I said goodbye to Scarlett and went inside the building. As I walked up the stairs, I remembered my childhood. Memories that had been lost with age came back instantly. Stepping into the apartment, the first thing I did was pull the curtains open. The sun's rays illuminated the old one-room apartment, where 90% of the air was dust and the other 10% a coffin-like silence. The air was heavy, and all of its smells mingled into one. My mother's perfume, dusty stacks of books, and wax candles melting in the sunlight. Only the photographs served as reminders that I once lived here too. I picked up one photo that interested me the most. It was of me wearing a hat, a polka dot dress, heels, and glasses. All of these were a few sizes bigger. My mom bought me clothes that were her size, the perfect gift, and most importantly, practical. That day, we were planning on going to the zoo. I was 7 years old. There were fewer and fewer bright colors in my life towards the end of the 80s. My mom and I were driving my dad's Beetle. Good old car from the 70s. The engine sounded like a car that would smoke 20 packs of cigarettes a day. I don't remember much about my dad. He died when I was 5. Aside from his last name and his red hair, he left me with one great memory. Or more precisely, he left me a story about leprechauns, little men who loved money. Generally speaking, my childhood memories could be divided into 3 parts. In the first part, my mother was in her first stage of cancer. The second was stage 2, and the third, she died. There could have been a 4th part, but my childhood ended at the exact moment I married Lars. I put the picture down and turned it to face the wall. I didn't like the way she looked at me. I went to bed that day with my blanket over my head, trying to hide from the outside world and my mother's tasteless choice of wallpaper colors. I got up according to my old prison schedule, without an alarm clock, and started cleaning the apartment, getting rid of old memories. Of course, I love my mother. I have only one mother, but I also appreciate cleanliness and order. And I don't like unnecessary things lying around. Minimalism is perfect for nerds like me. After selling all the junk in the apartment at auctions and online stores, I scraped together a fair amount of money to buy myself a laptop. I decided to get myself a job using the name Scarlett. One of the benefits of online work that it's ripe for the picking for ex-cons too. I didn't just need the laptop and unlimited internet for work, no. I was going to find out who would set me up. I also decided that the best way to remember everything would be to reenact that day. I spent every minute of my free time drawing. I drew and immersed myself in every detail of that moment. I reproduced every last droplet of blood on the floor, over and over again. Finally, I took a step back and looked at my creation from a distance. Perfect. Did I say that out loud? The doorbell rang, and there were 3 knocks at the door. I covered the painting, and with my paint-stained hands, I went to open the door for Charlotte.